Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new show that nobody asked for, and we're making it anyway. I think we're calling it Full Course Manga. Is that right?
That sounds good.
That sounds good.
Sounds
Okay.
sounds about right.
I cut you off. You didn't even get you don't get a vote, Neo. You don't get a vote. Anyway, you guys know who I am, obviously, because that's why you're here. I'm here with Neo at Read Toriko on Twitter,
What's up?
and I'm also here with RickFox. Who are you? Just at RickFox on Twitter?
Rick H. Fox.
Rick H Fox. Okay.
Rick Fox is taken by that jerk basketball player.
Ah, bastard. Anyway, so general quick overview of what we're going to do on this show is we're going to talk about a certain manga that we all read up to whatever chapter we decided to stop at, and then we're going to tell you guys if we liked it. So far be it from me to be presumptuous enough to assume that I should be the guy doing the overview. I'm going to let Neo give you guys the overview of the story that we chose to read, and take it away.
So we chose to read Toriko for our first show, fittingly, as we like to call the podcast, Full Course Manga. Toriko is about a gourmet hunter named Toriko who partners up with a chef named Komatsu, and they hunt basically like freakishly large monster hunter tier beasts to kill them, cook them, and eat them. Toriko has like superhuman strength and crazy anime abilities that are further enhanced by him eating specific foods.
And Komatsu pees himself.
Yes, and his partner Komatsu cries like a little baby in the corner, and then cooks the food. So he's a non-combatant, but his talent is cooking. And so the whole series is their adventures. Starting out, they meet each other by random chance. Komatsu needs Toriko for a job to hunt a Galala gator. So they go to a very dangerous island, the Barren Archipelago, or Archipelago. How do you say that?
A supposedly dangerous island. As you find out, the further you get into this is just like
Yeah.
baby mode.
So Toriko is a 7'2" X-pound guy. Like I actually don't know how much he weighs at the beginning of the series.
He's gotta be 300 easy.
Well, he takes a shit that is 15 kilograms. So that's
That should tell you something.
that should tell you something. He's known for his monstrous appetite, and so when he partners up with Komatsu, he's very excited to eat this gator. So they go to this island, and Toriko basically walks through this jungle and scares away every creature that gets in their face. They encounter the gator. There's a battle that ensues. I won't go too in depth about what happens because I think the reveal of Toriko's powers are very, very interesting.
Especially the moment when the gator eats him and then it becomes about the gator for the rest of the series.
Yes, the gator becomes Toriko. That's the gator's name.
He eats him and then absorbs his power, and he pairs up with a tiny chef.
So they do get, like, mechanically, I won't talk about the fight too much, but they do capture the ingredient and they get out of there. And then the next arc, if you even want to call it that, is another ingredient, the rainbow fruit. Just to touch on this one really quick, I'd like to get your guys' input. I thought it was really interesting that Toriko actually has this kind of rule that he imposes on himself out of like respect for nature, that if he doesn't find an animal or beast like edible or tasty or anything like that, like he straight up refuses to kill them. So like this whole arc is him kind of navigating through a giant field of gorillas.
Like on my first read through, I was basically just reading this simply so I could like have an engaging conversation with you about it because you were so vocal about how good it was. And I was really not into it at this point. So I wonder if I went back and read it now, if I would feel differently. But at the time, it felt like this was a almost like a Fist of the North Star type ripoff, because you got the big muscly guy who's got absurd power that's just walking through everything at this stage.
Right.
But I think that I think this actually does do a good job of setting the stage now that I know sort of where it's going, if that makes sense.
Right.
Well,
I
you
mean,
guys
I
know how
like.
I feel about Fist of the North Star ripoffs. So,
Yeah, we'll probably get to that one at some point. I mean, I just like it because like Toriko is established very early on as kind of like this do it all badass. Is very atypical to like a lot of other Shonen Jump protagonists early in their series.
Yeah, because he's
Um,
not some kid in high school that,
right.
like learning to do the most basic crap in the world. No, this guy's
Yeah.
already like established and a badass.
He's 25 and he's discovered like 2% of all the world's ingredients or something like that. He's world renowned and not a lot makes him sweat, at least where he is in the series right now. So I thought it was cool in this arc that he can't like he could kill them if he wanted to, but he doesn't. And because of that, like he has to kind of he can't solve problems the way he normally does. He has to kind of dance around them or try to knock them out, which makes fighting a little harder. So anyway, just thought that was cool.
I like that as an idea the further I get in, because once you have the context of these things are not actually that badass in the greater scope of this world,
Yeah.
I think that works a lot better. But like for me at the beginning of this, it wasn't as interesting as it would later be, just because it felt so baby mode. Like, okay,
Right.
why am I interested in this story? If this guy's never gonna like struggle at all,
Right.
which I was quickly disabused of that as it went on. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like that the scale of battles seems to kind of grow significantly with each story. And it also helps that like this first rainbow fruit thing is not a long arc. Like it's only
I mean it's like 5 chapters. They get this pretty quickly and move on. A lot of these early hunts are just kind of giving him time to spend time with Komatsu. Like that's really all they are.
Yeah, it's establishing their characters, like who they are.
So moving on, we go to the puffer whale arc. Toriko actually meets a fellow hunter named Koco.
Oh, Koco, so good.
These guys have a history. They go back a long time. They grew up together as kids. They're part of I guess it's not a trio. What is that? Like a quad?
Quartet?
Quartet. Yeah, that's the one.
Quartet. There you go.
That's what I'm here
quartet.
For. Words.
And so they're known as the Four Kings. They're all world-renowned gourmet hunters. They're all very good at what they do. They're all very strong. They're all very dangerous. And that they've all been separated. So we're meant to assume that this has been a while that they haven't like seen each other. So they get a reunion and they go on a hunt together. This is kind of like Komatsu's first arc that he really does anything besides like just cooking whatever Toriko brings back. He
and
actually
scream and cry.
Yeah, he actually has to like do stuff here.
And that helps a lot, to be honest. Like
Right.
I think that if the longer that he had stayed in that like I'm just gonna freak out and lose my mind type of thing, the longer the less interested I would be, because I mean I feel like Komatsu is very much the audience surrogate for the story, and so if you're putting him in the position of like just abject cowardice the entire time with nothing else, then that really makes it a lot less interesting. But once we get into this one, especially at the end when he's having to help prepare the puffer whales and doing it better than like Toriko is, I think that's what makes him really interesting, and it shows, oh, this guy will actually have a purpose going forward.
Right. We're given a problem that Toriko can't solve with his muscles or his, adaptability or his senses or anything that he's established as being really good at. He can't like delicately remove the poison from a small puffer whale. Like he can't do that no matter what. So like this is something Komatsu only can do. Koco says he can do it. He's just not very good at it.
And see, I like that a lot
so this is
too
like his
as
first,
they go forward. I don't know how much it comes out in the areas that we're going to cover, but especially later on, it kind of leans toward that Toriko's skill set is more replaceable than Komatsu's is in the grand scheme of things. That Komatsu, the little tiny dude who can't fight for shit, is actually like way more important.
Right. I mean, and I think someone even goes as far as to say that like in this world, like chefs are the most important thing. They
I
drive
believe
everything.
it's Koco
like,
that says that.
yeah, like fighters are completely replaceable, and like chefs are everything in this era. Like, so I mean, I agree. Like, I really like that element of Komatsu, and I'm glad it comes out so early. Otherwise, like, I think without Komatsu, this series really doesn't work. And
Oh yeah, for sure. Like Komatsu is
yeah.
a feature that is unlike anything I can really easily point to in any other like big shonen thing. I think that what might help it a little more is if I got the impression earlier that it is his love of food that is really the thing that makes him awesome, and not just some sort of inborn natural talent with cooking.
Yeah,
Because
I can see that.
That's the feature that really makes it endearing and makes me really care about him, is
Yeah.
that he loves this food. Like, he just loves food so much that like he can take shitty ingredients later on in the series and make stuff that is like absurdly good in comparison. You know, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think the same thing with Toriko too. Like, his, to go back to, like, he won't kill animals that he doesn't want to eat. Like, that's not contextualized until you understand, how he grew up, or, stuff like that. And in the beginning, it's just kind of like, oh, he doesn't want to kill animals that he doesn't want to eat. I get it. And it's kind of like Komatsu, like, oh, he's really good at cooking. Oh, okay, sure. Like, until that stuff's contextualized, that really brings them out. Luckily, it's not too long until that happens, but
Right. I think the other thing to talk about, there's two other things that I kind of want to bring up in this sort of, I guess you can call it an arc. I do want to talk at least a little bit about the fight with the Devil Viper, and get you guys' thoughts on that.
do you want to go ahead, Zen? Because
Sure. So the devil viper, the devil python. I think it's a devil python, right?
Devil
That might-
Python.
Yeah. So, he, I don't really know how I feel about that fight, to be honest, because they build it up to be like, holy shit, nobody in the whole world can kill this thing. That's like really a big deal. And then Koco is kind of like, nah, I can actually kill it. And so part of me is like, wow, Koco's really cool. That's really great. But I think early Toriko in general kind of suffers from a lot of like the heavy hitters making a really big deal about like, holy shit, this is the scariest monster ever. And then as it goes on, you realize, holy crap, that thing is nothing. That is complete
Yeah.
nothing.
Right. Yeah. I think if it was more like, this guy is out of our range, that might help it some, but it does feel like it, oh, this level 27 creature is really badass in this world where there are like level 900 things.
Well, yeah. The problem is I think at this point, like, this might be a cop out. I'm not sure, but like, I think at this point, Shima Bakuro didn't know like how far he was gonna take this. And you can see this a lot where with like the things like the Battle Wolf, which is introduced in the next arc. One of the 8 strongest species in the entire series. Like, there's nothing that can touch these things, and it goes toe to toe with a devil python, something that Koco and Toriko were able to defeat without too much trouble, and it doesn't immediately like it disintegrate it. Like, there are a lot of things that are kind of like, okay, like capture levels kind of aren't making the most sense right now. But I think
Right.
I think that like after the Battle Wolf thing, it's kind of like, oh, this mammoth is like the size of a country, and we literally like we understand that like this is one thing that like they're not gonna be able to defeat. Well, I guess more on that later.
Yeah, and
Right.
he
Right.
does a good
We'll
job
definitely
later
talk about that a
too
bit.
of making the enemies look as visually like difficult as they should be. Because earlier
Terrifying.
on,
Yeah.
there are enemies where they're just kind of like, looking at the devil python is like, yeah, it's scary, but so is the giant fucking gator that Toriko just absolutely obliterated with no problem at all.
Right.
And there's not anything that's super visually different about them that makes me think like, wow, that's a really big deal. But later on, when we get to the really big things that are like actually a big deal, they look sufficiently like fanciful and monstrous
Right.
and unique, which is good.
Also, fun fact, after a certain point, I believe it's the Ice Hell arc, which we won't cover in this podcast. A lot of the big monsters in Toriko that are like the focus of arcs or pretty significant, most of them are designed by readers. I don't know if anybody like noticed this when they were reading, like either of you, but
I didn't realize the big ones were, but I did notice that
Yeah.
like so many different creatures were designed by readers.
Yeah,
I liked
like
that. I
the
thought that was a cool idea.
The four beasts are reader designs. Like those are not Shima's.
Nice.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of ones, and I mean he does a lot. Like he still draws the things, but like there's a lot that he like made the readers really involved. So I mean,
Right.
you got some sickos reading Shonen Jump because some of these creatures are super creepy to look at. Like,
For sure. And I think that a thing that helps as you get further and further in is that like, a lot of authors really, but in this series in particular, it benefits more from having more pieces on the board because one of the great things about Toriko is its world building. And so the more little dots you can kind of connect and go like, okay, I'm getting a general idea of the scale of power of how strong Toriko is in this world or in this part of the world, how big and badass these monsters are that he's hunting are. The more that you kind of get a general sense of that, the more he can kind of play with interesting ideas within that of like pitting things against each other and that sort of thing.
right.
So the other thing that I think that we should also talk about is, to some degree at least, is Koco, since he gets introduced here. Koco is probably my favorite of the four kings, at least from a design standpoint. I don't know why that is. I can't really point to a specific thing. I just really like
Well,
him.
he's a lot of people's favorites. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of people who've been reading this series lately, and he's probably, if I were to do a poll of everybody I interact with who reads Toriko, Koco would easily win, like number one, like no question. I don't know why, but I have a few guesses. He's just so cool.
I think it's that he's a really cool character, and he also has this very down to earth vibe to him that
Right.
in Toriko is so kind of at odds with the general outlandishness of everything around him that I think that helps.
He is the least fantastical of the four kings by like a mile,
And it's
not
funny
even a
because
bad
right
thing.
after him, you go
You
into
get the
Sunny, who is
most
like
one.
the most flamboyant and over the
Yeah.
top one.
Okay, so I don't know about you guys, but Sunny is definitely the bottom of my list of the four kings. Is that true of you two or as well? Or
I do like the One Piece crew bullshit where like I love them all a lot, but I have a favorite, right? But if I had to rank them, it would probably be a lock between Koco and Sunny, with Sunny a little bit on top. Like Coco's probably the least for me.
and I think that makes sense as you get further in, but I don't want to talk too much about that.
Yeah, I can't. I have like 4 or 5 reasons why Sunny's up there, and I can't talk about them.
I think that he does get better treatment as you get further on into the series.
Yeah, and
but
sadly, Koco gets worse treatment.
Yeah, my boy just doesn't get it. But okay, so in this arc, one of the things that's introduced is so one thing that we haven't mentioned about Toriko that kind of comes up a lot is his sense of smell, and that's sort of a
Right.
slightly defining feature of him, especially early on. And when Koco shows up, he's got a very advanced sense of sight, so advanced that he can tell somehow magically when people are going to die soon.
Yes. It's some electromagnetic wave shit that we're not supposed to think about too much.
Yeah.
Right.
Something
And
like that.
It's
I'm willing
anime
to go
science.
along with that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
It's
he
anime
can
stuff.
He
That's
can
what he can
see
do.
in slow mo. Like he basically sees in slow motion. He can see in the dark cave, like it's daytime. Like, that there's a lot, but somehow that comes with he can tell people's fortunes based on invisible shit he can't. No
It's
one
the
else
same
can
as
see, I
like
guess.
aura reading. Like when you have a character in anime, it's like I can
Basically.
read people's aura. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the tension in this arc is, at least I think, supposed to come from the fact that Komatsu is going to die. And like, I feel like this is too early for that kind of thing, because there's no way Komatsu's gonna die. But at the same time, maybe if you're gonna play that, maybe playing it early is a good idea, because maybe this guy is the kind of guy who would kill his characters off this soon.
Yeah, well, I think there's a recurring theme this early in Toriko, and it is a big part of the next arc that we will talk about, which is like knowing the risks and being ready for anything, where like a lot of characters teeter on this edge of like dying, and it either happens or doesn't happen because like they know what they signed up for. And I think this was just Komatsu's like kind of inauguration into that mindset. Like I don't think it was supposed to be like a big tension moment. I think it was supposed to introduce a character, Jiro, namely, bring him back and show out what a monster he is. And it was supposed to like flex Coco's powers. I remember reading this weekly back when I was a dumb idiot little kid, and I didn't seriously think Komatsu was gonna die. But I mean, that is just the way I read it. So I mean, I understand what you mean. Like,
I mean, it's just one of those things of like, okay, you're raising
like
a death flag for a main character. You're not gonna do that, man.
Yeah,
like, it's just not the way it works.
I see this a lot in a lot of manga, so I can't pretend like it's not in here because it is. Like, yeah, Komatsu's gonna die, except he's basically a title character, so he's not gonna die. Like
he's literally second in importance to Toriko at this point.
So I complain about this in a lot of other shirts.
I don't know. I think at this point you could argue that his value hadn't been established yet.
That's true. Yeah, I would agree with that, honestly. Like he had done the rainbow fruit thing, and that had got put on Toriko's full course, which is kind of a big deal. But they hadn't established that, like, they hadn't nearly established him as much as they would going forward.
Yeah, like he's
not
done
food
the
Jesus
Puffer
yet.
Whale thing. Like, yeah, exactly. He hasn't done the Puffer Whale thing. Him and Toriko haven't even officially partnered up. Like, he hasn't risked his life in stricter terms for a hunt. Stuff like that. So yes and no. I agree with you about 60% in your favor, and then 40% in my own like little,
I would put it this way: I think it's a flaw in the story, but I don't think it's a major flaw. And I think that the main reason for that is that you could fix it, at least in my mind, real easy by saying, instead of going with like he is going to die, you go, okay, this character is going to get majorly injured, because I think that would. Because I mean, if Komatsu gets majorly injured by one of these things, I think you still have that potential for death there. But also, I feel like it is not as definite as saying he will definitely 100% die.
Well, I mean,
and he does technically die, to be fair.
Yeah, I was just about to say I could get really technical, but I don't want to.
Right, exactly.
His heart does stop. His eardrums shatter and his heart stops. He does die, but
right. And
luckily you have a guy there who, has trained and learned how to revive people for
I'll be honest,
reasons.
I wish that I had known how awesome that guy would be later on, because at the time I was like, oh, okay, it's some old man. All right, whatever.
He's introduced as very inconsequential, yeah.
But he might be one of my favorite characters in the entire thing. Like, he's awesome. I love Jiro.
But I mean, I know I said we weren't going to spend too much time on these arcs, but there's one last thing I want to cover in the Puffer Whale arc, because it's super relevant to the next one, is the robot.
Oh, yeah, that does show up here, doesn't it?
This is probably like one of my favorite moments in all of Toriko, and this is probably the moment that sunk me like for good into the series. They're enjoying their spoils after successfully preparing this whale, and enjoying it and eating it and crying and laughing and all of that good stuff. And a creepy looking like bird-like robot comes out of the water holding like a giant net of these whales that Toriko and Koco struggled for hours just to catch 11 of. It walks out of the water and it locks eyes with Koco and Toriko, and they like about shit themselves and bring out like their full power. Koco goes like completely like toxic. His skin turns like completely black.
Did we actually talk about at all about what Koco does as far as the poison thing?
I don't know if we did.
We haven't really talked about anybody's powers too much.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay away from them totally, so I guess I slipped up there. But
I mean, I don't think there's really necessarily a reason to worry about like giving people ideas.
Yeah.
Like Toriko's powers are basically, punch stuff to death.
Yeah.
Koco is much more poison based. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think this is like a really good moment where these characters who have just kind of breezed through a cave like look legitimately terrified, and have no idea what's going on. Like even Toriko says like, oh shit, like Koco's serious, he means business, he's not fucking around, and then he like gets really intense. And then I think there's a panel where this thing just looks at them, scratches its head, and just walks away. Like it doesn't even give a fuck. It has no interest in them, like whatsoever. And this is like the first inkling of these guys aren't shit in the big grand scheme of things. Like this is the first kind of idea we get of a power disparity.
Yeah, I think that what makes this work is how easy it's been for especially Toriko up to this point, but both of them really. And then this thing just doesn't care about them, and they are terrified of it, and that's why they're so like bristling as soon as it shows up. And
right.
I really like that, especially when, you know, since we're going to get into the next arc, at least to some degree, you find out that like if those two fought, that Starjun's robot thing, or was that a different one?
Yeah, well, it wasn't his robot, but he was piloting it. Yeah, so
okay, so like if they had fought that thing at this point, they're probably both dead.
Oh yeah, like 100%. Like they would have died very quickly.
I will say, like the I liked it more when I didn't think it was a robot.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I do
like a creature,
like some kind of monster. Yeah.
I guess I can't remember what the fuck I thought it was the first time I read it. It was so long ago.
Because they very quickly reveal that it's a robot. It's like right at the beginning of the next arc, they reveal that it was a robot. But I really liked it when I thought it was some kind of ancient monster, which it did sort of end up kind of being later on.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other story.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, ooh.
But I like that depth. I wonder if he had that in mind at this stage, like that reveal later of what
that's
those
stuff I always like to think about. Like, I would like to imagine he did, but maybe he didn't. So who knows? Like, you know what I mean?
Right. I mean,
like to think he had the whole human world saga planned out, but he also may not have.
Right. Yeah.
Really hard for me to say.
the only author that I feel like I can consistently give that level of planning to is Oda, and that's just because he is like absurd about how far along he goes. But this guy's apparently friends with Oda, so like maybe
they're BFFs. Maybe it came off through osmosis or something.
Right.
So moving on to the next arc. This is kind of like a 2-for-1, like under the Regal Mammoth arc, which is the name of this one. There's kind of like a pit stop at a facility that studies food and creatures and stuff like that, run by the government, or the world government, I should say. There's a coliseum in here that we're told that Toriko spent a lot of time here when he was younger, fighting there as like a caged beast, basically. He doesn't seem to have fond memories of this place. And they
imagine that now that I think about that.
Yeah, right. I mean, geez. And they all did this. They all 4 of them, all of the kids did this.
Well, I can definitely see Zebra doing that.
Yeah, it's a shame we can't talk about my dude right there, but yeah. So they revive and clone the Battle Wolf, which I briefly alluded to earlier. Like one of the strongest.
The intro they get this thing is
yes,
like
the Battle Wolf is the rawest shit early on in Toriko,
and then they name it Terry Cloth.
Hey, so this clone gives birth, just to fly through this, because like there's a lot of good stuff here, and I don't really want to cover too much of it because I want it to be experienced and not explained. Toriko gets a pet wolf, and he names it Terry Cloth because its fur is really soft. Okay, we said he was really strong. We never said he was really smart. All right.
Well, okay, wait. I do want to kind of talk about like what we're doing here philosophy-wise, because like I don't know what else we would do if we were not at least to some degree explaining stuff. Because I mean,
right. I just think that this one has a lot of emotional oomph, at least it did for me, and I don't really want to like run through every single beat in the Gourmet Coliseum because I think that that's one that can really hit. At least it did for me.
because that didn't for me, and like this.
That's because you're a soulless monster and you don't care about animals. That's all that is.
I mean, if I don't own them, that is probably true. But still, like, was it just like, because we see a lot of stuff returning from previous stories here? Was it just like that attachment, or
this is the first time we really get to see Toriko's respect for nature and creatures meet the like a foil of something that has no regard for nature or creatures, and you really get to see like angry Toriko, and then you get to see like the effects of something he talked about 2 arcs ago, like senseless killing of creatures does damage to the ecosystem if you don't respect life and eat.
Yeah, that's fair, I think.
And so like his anger, you kind of understand, like he doesn't like to see senseless violence. And I mean, this is something they all kind of, all 3 of the heavenly kings that are sane kind of share this sentiment. Like later on, Sunny sees kind of the same exact thing, like a wasteland that's kind of just been a bunch of animals just killed. And this is the first time he cracks too. This is the first time he gets angry. He doesn't, like, he breaks character, as to say, like he kind of stops it with all the beautiful shit and all the pretty princess stuff, and he gets really mad. Like,
I think that even Zebra, like I think he's the one you were leaving out of that, but I think even he has his own kind of twisted version of it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think it was because of how they all grew up together and stuff like that, which is, you know, a part of what I really like about all 4 of these characters. I think that even if they don't all get the same amount of love, you know, because one is the main character, you still understand them all as much as you need to, I guess, that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to some degree. I think that for me, what doesn't make some of this hit is that, like, Toriko is real buddy with Mansam.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, is that these are good guys.
Yeah, like this is not like it's supposedly this bad underground thing.
Oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what happens to the Battle Wolf.
But that was still their program, wasn't it?
No, now you're just gonna make me talk about it. The GT robot shows up and
I thought you were talking about the fact that it was a cloned monstrosity.
No, that seems to not really bother Toriko. I think he has an offhanded comment to Mansam about how it's kind of like weird to mess with nature like that, but he's too enthralled with seeing a living battle wolf to really get upset about it. But he does like break the dome and like free all the animals.
The thing is, like, he does also have this disgust for the idea of this fighting ring. I feel like
that's very clearly communicated, I would say,
and that doesn't hit very hard for me, because like this guy that he's buddy with, Mansam, is a big part of that, and Rin, this girl that is like constantly trying to, like, thinks about nothing but banging Toriko, which, to be fair, he's like 7'2" and ripped like a giant.
Yeah, who doesn't think about that shit?
Right, but at the same time, it is difficult for me to take seriously his disgust for this place when, like, he's super good friends with like both of the people really deeply involved with running the shit.
No,
you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he has like a moment where he is talking to the wolf specifically, like, as silly as that sounds, like, and he says, like, you know, I was a caged beast here once, and like I learned to hate this place, but you know, I'm not a monster and neither are you, blah blah blah, some shit like that. But I was more talking about his anger when a living somewhat being, a human, causes harm to an animal for no reason. Like the battle wolf gets clipped, you know, and starts to die, and he gets really fucking mad. And that whole scene, and like Terry being birthed and brought into this world, and like having like 2 seconds with his mom before his mom like this stuff, that hit for me. I do. It's very based on like wolf behavior is. Sure. I mean, Shima actually did his homework. Like, this is pretty accurate. Newborn wolves spend a little bit of time with like their mother, and then they go and like search for their own shit and like join their own pack and all that stuff. And I just thought it was cool. And pretty emotional, but it's not like I was like wetting the pages of my Shonen Jump comic with tears. It was just like, you know, it moved me a little bit.
Yeah, it got you. Yeah, I can get that. And I mean, like
cold heart.
I'm not trying to like throw any shade on that. Like, there's just gonna be stuff that speaks to any given person. Yeah. Like, I mean, I always make the joke that, like, you know, there is a series where a goofy kid with a bowl cut gets in a fight with a guy that throws sand at him, and it makes me cry. So,
yeah,
like,
I agree. I agree. Yeah, exactly, for sure.
But like I said, I think that the things that undercut it are those emotional beats it doesn't really fit all together as well as stuff would later on in his work. I feel like you can really still see Shima getting his feet under him here.
He's still feeling it out, and he's about to hit his stride in the next arc. Or this arc, I guess, technically.
Honestly, like I was not super into Toriko until I finished the Jewel Meat arc. That's the one that's where I was hooked.
So they step out of this after this confrontation in the gourmet Coliseum. Toriko gets his new pet wolf, Terry. They step out after having a nice meal to hunt a regal mammoth, which contains something in it called jewel meat, which is apparently a piece of meat that shines brightly like a piece of jewelry and contains the flavors and texture of like every cut of red meat ever, at once at the same time, and is like the most delicious thing ever.
I think that the introduction of the regal mammoth is one of the best in the series as far as like introducing an animal, because like the way that it happens is Sunny, who we meet at this point, and this impresses us of how awesome he is as well. But like he shows up and he's carrying this like large hill, small mountain sized mammoth,
he's
right?
just
by himself, just chilling around.
He's a large boy.
It's like so big. Like the panel is, or the page, I think it's a page, I can't remember, is so insane. It's just like you can barely see him under the mammoth drawn out on this full spread, and then you just see like his eye, and I think that's either the end of a chapter or like close to it, and this is how we see him.
But the best part is that, like, you think, oh, they already got this thing, all right? Okay, that's fine. They're already done. No, that's a baby version of the actual insanely huge monster that they're trying to find. And I love that. That is a great single moment. Like, Sunny is by far my least favorite of the four, but I think that is a really strong introduction for him and for the Regal Mammoth and for this arc. Zen, you've been kind of quiet for a while. What do you think?
So the early portions of this arc, I think, are good. I still think at this point I didn't really know how I felt about the GT robots, and they're a huge part of it at this point. I was not super into them. I kind of always compare Toriko. I don't know who told me this the first time. I think it might have been Neo, because it probably was if I was talking about Toriko with anybody. That Toriko is a lot like Hunter x Hunter if the story was actually about people doing shit that they're supposed to do.
God, that would be so much better.
If Hunter x Hunter was actually about people
dislike the video.
doing it.
We gotta don't say bad shit about Hunter x Hunter. They're gonna dislike the video.
Man, I am waiting for the day that we get, because we should definitely do Hunter x Hunter at some point, just so I can crap all over
I want to point out that I love Hunter x Hunter before anyone gets upset. I love it.
I like what I've seen.
I love Killua.
Fair. But so the GT robots, the way they were introduced kind of annoyed me, because I don't know if cheapened is the right word, but up to this point we've seen Toriko and Koco and now Sunny, who are just these crazy awesome dudes and these giant, monstrous beasts that are I don't know if magical is the right word, but they have like a quality to them that's, unique and fantastical.
Like so impossible.
And then this dude's like, yeah, doctors built this robot and it could totally fuck everybody up with just nothing.
Yeah.
I think what would make it a lot stronger, honestly, is if we had some inkling of why these robots are being used. Because like Starjun is a character that is
We do, though.
They do
we?
mention it in
Yeah.
this one, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the
Yeah.
reason?
So originally it was to hunt things without putting hunters in danger.
Right.
And additionally, it's to let them traverse areas of the world that might be a little too dangerous for regular human beings to do so.
Right.
Or for recon. So all three of these things were what the IGO like originally kind of wanted them to do.
Right.
And then there was the offshoot, which is like the Gourmet Corp, which took it and ran with it.
And then
used
I
them
think
for
at the end
everything.
of this arc, that's when the nondescript doctor for the bad guys says that the robot that Toriko ends up destroying, he did like 4 or 5 fatal blows that would have killed a person.
Yeah, Jojo.
All right, well, I'm not
That's the
going to call him
guy's name.
that.
Right.
That's
But
the
why-
guy's name.
But why were Gourmet Corp using it this time? Like, why did they send the robots here?
Oh, for that
I
specific
don't-
mission?
Yeah, I think it's literally just like this is how they hunt.
Well, okay,
because
but,
Starjun used it to dive under and get all the fish.
But like Starjun, if he went by himself, he would be only more effective. That's the thing that we find out going
Yeah,
forward.
correct.
Like if they didn't have to even send all of these guys. They could have just sent Starjun, and this whole thing is done.
Well, I think
Correct.
at this
Like, and I
point,
realized
too,
that
it's
Sergeant
supposed to,
isn't-
like, be kind of like these guys don't have respect for what it's supposed to be. That when you're
Right, but
hunting,
the
you're
thing
putting
with the-
yourself at risk in a contest with the animal, and they're taking that
Sure.
out of it.
The idea is that they could literally sit back at their headquarters and hunt everything in the world like at once, basically, with their whole army, because the power of the user of the robot does not matter.
And I think if they made that clear, that would help a lot. Like if they
Yeah,
made it clear
they
they had
don't.
tons of these everywhere.
Yeah, they really don't. So I'll give you that. They really don't make it clear. They make it seem like they have like 3 or 4 of these at a time.
Yeah,
But they
and-
have a fuckload of them. Like they have a lot. It's so many.
Like the real reason
robot-
that he's being sent in the robot here is so that Toriko doesn't get murdered instantly the second he
basically
encounters this guy.
Yes.
Like and I feel like that comes across more than the idea that it's a disrespect for food.
Well,
at
like,
least from what's
here's a
going
good-
on here.
Here's kind of a good example. Is they sent in the Regal Mammoth arc, they sent a squad of 3. They sent one to go in and mess up the insides. They sent one to get the jewel meat, and they sent one for the outside to kind of grapple with the mammoth itself. I think they actually sent 4 because I think one gets stepped on.
Yeah.
So
one
all
does.
of them have like a job, and the one that Koco fights is like really tall, like it's really big, and that's clearly meant to do something other than like fight people
Yeah.
or
I
stuff
mean,
like
it's-
that. So
I think it's meant to fight big giant things.
yeah, it's not made like super clear like the reason or the purpose specifically, but it's pretty obvious that the Gourmet Corp like has an idea of what these things are supposed to be used for. But I'll give you like it's super painfully obvious also that the only reason Starjun's in a robot is so that we can have a story that continues after this and doesn't end with Toriko getting murdered.
Right. Yeah. And that's sort of my issue with it is like,
Yeah.
there are ways you can get around that. And I mean, I should kind of talk since this is the first episode and this might go on for a while. I should probably mention that like if I point out a thing that is wrong with a series, that doesn't mean like you're a bad person for liking that series or even maybe that thing. I'm coming at this as someone who is a writer and is gonna release his own book soon. You should check that out. Haha. But like I want to examine stories and pull them apart so that I can get better at writing myself. And so I think
Right.
that this is an issue with the story of like if they had just made it clear that like because I mean I think Starjun does kick someone out of that robot and take over it at some point in the story, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So like if they just focused on more of like, yeah, they're doing this all the time and Starjun jumped in because this place was having trouble. I think that would help it a lot of making it feel less like, oh yeah, why didn't they just send Starjun to just take care of this himself? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But I do love the fight between his GT robot and Toriko. I think that was the moment that I was like, all right, this is getting pretty cool. I want to
Yeah,
keep
and-
reading this.
And so we get introduced to Sunny and they start moving towards the mammoth pretty quickly. Like everything, the pacing in Toriko is pretty consistently, okay, let's start moving towards what we have to do and let's just do it. Let's not waste any fucking time and we can develop our character on the way there. Like something I appreciate and also have like grapple with on occasion. But so Sunny is kind of the odd man out, oddly enough, in the Four Kings. He's got like the most off-putting personality. Like
He's such an asshole.
He reminds me a lot of Rohan.
Fantastic. I totally agree with you, actually. He's super like Rohan from JoJo, which is funny because Koco is actually the voice of Rohan in the Toriko anime, but I digress. They're both very like flamboyant and passionate about one specific thing, and they almost let it like rule their lives. Kind of like Death the Kid is like obsessed with symmetry and Soul Eater. Like Sunny's obsessed with beauty. Like this is kind of his thing. Like he gets hair treatments, face treatments, you know, all of this stuff.
When I saw the way that he's drawn like outside of black and white, I was like, oh wow, okay, gotcha.
Just Google Sunny from Toriko and you're gonna understand what we're talking about in terms of like, I mean, he's I love his design, but it is incredibly jarring when you look at him to like compared to the other Heavenly Kings.
Just to anyone, really.
Yeah, just to anybody, even anyone in any manga. Or just anyone in Toriko.
It's hilarious to me. Like, I have no sense of taste, so maybe I'm wrong. But it's hilarious to me that he is so obsessed with beauty, and he has the most, like, garish, over-the-top hairstyle ever, like, possible.
Yeah,
it is kind of ugly to me, honestly.
It's never clear if he dyed it that way, or if that's just a result of his... Spoiler.
His personality.
Yeah, but yeah, his Sunny's deal is touch, kind of like Koco is sight and Toriko is smell. Sunny's touch, so all of his hair, every single individual strand of his hair, he can move it on his own, kind of like string that he controls. He can use it to control things remotely, people, creatures, whatever.
Because like some of it is longer than like what you can see. Like some of it he has these extra long.
It's sort of like an insect antenna for reference.
Yeah.
So he can use it to water stride. He has like some of the most versatile. I think his skill set is maybe the most versatile next to Zebra's. Like
Zebra's definitely got him beat, but like, but he's a close second, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, he can water stride. He can like carry people and climb up the side of walls and mountains and stuff. Like this guy can do everything. He can, and he's incredible. He's so strong. And this is the thing: is they introduce them increasingly in terms of what I feel like OP-ness. Like I think that in terms of how fucking busted they are at their introduction, like Sunny is definitely second under Zebra. Like he smacks away like capture level 30 creatures like they're nothing.
For sure, yeah. I would agree with that.
It's just incredible like how well done his flex is, because they all kind of get one. And
yeah, I will say that Koco never felt stronger than Toriko when they got introduced. And Sunny 110% does.
Yes. I would agree with that. And even Zebra as well, I would say when he gets introduced, he also feels stronger than Toriko. But like Sunny, or poor Koco rather, I mean, he always gets the short end of the stick.
Well, like the two of them, like Koco and Toriko are like the two grounded hunters. And I think like Zebra and Sunny are like the non grounded or straight men, if you want to call them that. Like Zebra and Sunny are like wild and insane in personality and even in power and skill set too. So
man, I hope we keep doing this long enough to talk about Zebra. To talk about Sunny for a second though, I think that for me in this arc, what saved him as a character was how interesting his power was, because I really didn't like Sunny's personality at this stage. I think he grew on me later when he gets a little bit of I guess humility to him, but like his power set was enough that I was like, okay, I can tolerate this guy existing.
Yeah,
because he's got such cool ability.
I think for me, I just like he was such a dick, and I liked that because there's like little hints of, you know, a person under there, because he's kind of nice to Komatsu when he notices like how good he is at cooking, or at least his like appreciation for ingredients. When they're like picking mushrooms, Sunny kind of like gives him a little like a glance after kind of passing over him.
That did help some.
Yeah, like the scene I mentioned earlier, like they find like a field of dead animals that have not been touched at all. Like they're just kind of carcasses that have meat on them and fur and bone and all of this stuff that like chefs and hunters should use to the fullest in the eyes of the four kings. And you see him get really frustrated. He gets really angry. Like he literally says like, they're gonna see a side of me that nobody sees, that isn't very beautiful, I think is like his little keyword.
Right, yeah. And then every arc later that he's actually in, he does get pissed as well. But it's okay here. I like
the
that.
first initial
moment for him.
And so when we get to like this is like the beginning of the kind of like almost like One Piece-ification of these big hunts, these big ones. Not every single arc, but Sunny gets a bad guy, Koco gets a bad guy, and then Toriko gets the strongest bad guy. Like all three of them get a fight, and
that's kind of standard shonen, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair, but I like it the most in One Piece. It always feels the most like
he does have a way of really getting good, interesting characters together to fight each other.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant I like it the most in One Piece, except for when it's in That's what I meant to say.
Hey, one day we will talk about One Piece as well, and I'll get to fanboy as much as you do here.
Yeah, for sure. So I think Sunny's fight is actually my favorite in terms of like what happens at the very end, because I just like how he kind of lets this guy beat the shit out of him, and then he just like one shots him basically with
that was a really interesting setup. One thing that I have really gained an appreciation for over the years with reading a lot of shonen is a good fight. And the thing that I think is really important in a good fight is that reveal moment of like, oh, I have this thing up my sleeve that is going to completely turn the tables on you. Yeah. And that's a really good one here.
She was like, I was just letting you get close. And you're like, what? What do you
exactly.
mean? Like,
yeah,
you're bleeding.
I guess I'm the odd man out here. I really liked Sunny, like from the get-go.
Really?
Yeah, when he was first introduced, he was my favorite character.
Really?
As that went on.
So what drew you to him?
I see. I'm really big on characters that are stylized and are wacky and are just sort of like embracing some kind of crazy artistic vision. And Toriko's cool, but he's just like a dude with spiky anime hair.
Toriko's super basic.
Toriko's super basic. Koco, I mean, he's the same kind of thing where he's like, hey, look, it's Kakyoin, Piccolo, Sasuke, like every brainy ally character.
Yeah,
and
then
Sunny shows up.
Handsome, pretty
Yeah,
good.
He's the handsome, smart one to contrast Toriko being the wild, crazy one. And then Sunny shows up and he's completely like his own thing. And he's out there and he's crazy and he's a fucking asshole. And it's great. And I love it.
Yeah, he's amazing. And we didn't mention it earlier, but he literally like tosses that mammoth to Chief Mansum. He's just like, here, catch, you got it. Like, take it.
Yeah, here you go. And he did have it, but barely.
Like, yeah, he's such an asshole. I really liked that about him too, but I wasn't like sold on him until his fight. That's really what got me on board. Like Team Sunny, like I loved him after this arc.
Man, I was not on board with Sunny until like 150 chapters later or so.
Yeah.
Like by the end of this arc, I didn't mind him. His introduction rubbed me wrong, but that's because I don't like asshole characters. I didn't think he was a problem with the story. That's definitely in personal taste land for me.
Right.
But like I that is interesting to me that you gravitated so strongly towards Zen.
Yeah, I don't know if it's. I mean, I don't want to call it his JoJo nest to pigeonhole
That's exactly what it is.
But it is sort of like that. Is that I like a character that is just like, you see him and he strikes you immediately. With
Sunny could literally function in JoJo as a JoJo character, and nothing. Exactly. Like he's just like if Yukiko from Part 4 was a dude, and didn't have anger issues and instead had a beauty complex, like that would be Sunny. Like that's
Pretty
it.
much,
Like,
yeah.
like, that's it. You're done.
Yeah,
I
I
really
like a
need Zen
character
to get to the
who
point where Frankie
strikes
is
you
introduced
instantly.
in One Piece now.
I mean, Frankie is a JoJo character. He's just, Frankie.
Frankie is special.
What
But
did you
anyway,
guys,
back to Toriko.
What did you guys think of Coco's fight?
I wish we got more fights from him. I think I could, in this fight, already feel that Shima was running up against, okay, what do I do with poison as a thing?
How do I make poison not the most broken fucking power in any series ever? Like, this is really where it kind of is.
Which is weird, because Toriko is filled with the most broken powers ever.
And yet...
Well, see, here's the problem, though, is that Toriko has a shit ton of crazy, like, hacks powers. But the issue with poison is that either it's fatal or it's not.
Or it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's no
Right.
two ways around it. So you can have all these crazy hacks powers that people can find ways to deal with, but with poison, either it kills you or it doesn't kill you, and those are the only two options that it has.
Right. It's a lot
I
like...
really don't think there's a third either. Like, that's the thing, is...
It's a lot like fire as a power in anime, because fire almost never does anything in anime because it's either fatal or it's not.
Yeah.
And so, but the problem is that poison has one more problem beyond what fire has, because fire looks cool. So you can do a lot of cool looking stuff with fire.
Yeah.
But with poison, you're just kind of like,
It just looks like sludge. Yeah.
Yeah.
My skin turns purple, and then I do stuff. Like, yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned fire does nothing in anime, because that immediately made me think of Black Clover, where it's a healing ability.
Is it really?
It is, yeah.
It's hilarious. So, I think that Toriko, for me at least, has the best fight here, because I think that this was the first time that we saw him really get pushed. Like, he got pushed a little bit by the what was it? The Viper thing, whatever.
Devil
Python.
Yeah, the thing that I'll never remember the name of. But yeah, like, this fight was the first one that made me sit up and pay attention to Toriko, because it had a lot of really good back and forth. Toriko got shit stomped at the beginning of it, which is always going to make me interested in a fight in an anime. But I really like the hints that we get about future things that are to come in this moment. Because Toriko gets, like, is this the one where he gets a hole punched in his chest, or is that later?
I believe it's this one, because this is the one where he pretty much only wins because he gets lucky.
Yeah. Like, he gets...
So he gets like a mini donut. I don't want to say if it's like... I don't think it's like completely through, but I know he takes like a big chest hit, and then Starjan smacks him in the head, and his neck snaps, basically. Like, he really gets fucking worked. Like, there's a panel of Starjan just smacking him in the face.
And Koco has been like, someone's going to die. My vision senses tell me someone in that group is going to die.
Toriko's head literally on the panel is like so far away from his shoulders. It's insanely...
Oh, I remember that moment. Yeah, that was brutal. And that's one thing I do love about Toriko, especially going further in, like past this moment. They have some brutal like panels.
I hate to make the comparison again, but you guys have brought up One Piece multiple times, so I feel justified.
Yeah, go for it, dude.
Again, very much reminds me of JoJo, where they're like, fuck the gore and stuff. We'll just do what we want to do, and we'll justify the healing later.
Yeah,
we're not going to downplay it so that people don't ask
good.
questions.
Like, if you can get the impact out of the moment, like where the thing happens, I'm okay with later, like, just doing some bullshit to heal them. Like, that the important thing is that you sell the hit in the moment and during the fight, and I think that they do a good job of that here.
And they do an amazing job of it later. Like,
there's a particular arc that I want to get to with this. We won't do it today, but when we talk about the Century Soup arc and the aftermath of that, like, that they do an excellent job of it there. But here, I really like this moment where it looks like not JoJo. What am I talking about? Toriko has lost completely.
Got him, boys.
Hey, I am a JoJo fan. I talk a lot of shit about it, but just the early parts. But yeah, I really like that moment where Toriko gets punched into the jewel meat area and just barely, finds the will to move on, you know? Because
Right.
wait, doesn't what happened be like he loses and then the autophagy thing happens and then he still loses again? Isn't that
Yes.
the progression of things?
He gets like rocked in like 2 hits, and then
He goes Kaioken.
something
basically.
happens. Yeah, Rin gets hurt and he gets really mad, and then he activates autophagy, which is like the coolest shit ever in my opinion. Like I think it's way deeper than Kaioken, so deep that like fucking like college and high school teachers have used this manga as like an example of this phenomenon because it
Have
happened.
they really? That's awesome.
Yeah, like the guy that the scientist that discovered this or like proved that it happened won a Nobel Prize, and he was from Japan, and I think that when it happened they made like 5 volumes of the first 5 volumes of Toriko free on Viz for like a month or something like that, because
That's
like
great.
he literally, and like professors in college and shit like cited this manga as like a really good example of like how to wrap your head around the concept and the phenomenon.
Nice. But
yeah,
I like
Shima
that
really did
because
his homework.
because the thing that makes this work is like the thing that sells how badass this robot is that he's going up against, and in turn how badass Toriko is for barely overcoming it, is these moments of like, okay, he's already lost, oh shit, he got a power up and came back, he's gonna totally, oh god, he's dead
Right.
again.
And I
Like-
think we should point out that it's not as much selling how badass the robot is, it's selling how much more badass Starjun would be.
That does help. Like
Yeah.
later when you
Well-
find out that the robot is holding him back, that's a
Like-
solid, strong
like
moment.
a good amount too.
Yeah, it's not like a little bit. It's like if he was here, he could take Sunny, Koco, and Toriko all together, no problem.
Yeah, it's a big holding back thing. And you know, I think I don't know this for sure because it's never said or stated or even shown, but I think that they didn't know anyone else would be coming for them, and that's kind of why they sent these kind of wimpy guys in GT robots, and Starjun didn't come in until they had confirmation that Toriko and his gang were in the area.
Right.
You know, like it didn't seem like, well, he's like, okay, well, I don't have time to fly out there, like I'll just get in the robot and I'll do it myself, like whatever, fine.
Right.
But even then, like Toriko has to do so much to even close this gap a little bit, and he really has to work for it. And by work for it, I mean he has to get lucky and find the jewel meat.
Yeah,
and,
get
and
smacked
eat it.
into the only way he could win, basically.
Right.
Exactly.
That is a thing that I love when in any anime where they like pull a moment where, okay, the hero's been beaten and he heroically gets back up and it's time and you know he's gonna win that fight and then he doesn't. I always love that shit. That's
Yeah.
always a strong like, oh, okay, I'm paying attention now.
Especially when this is like a concept and a phenomenon that's in the series and is very consistent within its own
Yes.
rules and all that shit. And
Consistency is a big deal for me.
it's the first time it's introduced, autophagy, and it fails him. Like it doesn't actually do anything. Like
Right.
he
It's
gets
great.
up. I think he makes a scratch or a ding on Starjun's like face, the robot's face,
Yeah.
and then he just gets fucking killed again. Like he just gets sent flying back. Like it doesn't actually work. You know, it's kind of like Thanos, where he's like all that for a drop of blood. You know, like he's like,
Right.
okay, get the fuck out of my face again. Like bye. Like he just smacks him back, and
Man.
then Toriko discovers the meat. Like he finds it completely by accident, and round 3 he takes a little slice of it and he eats it raw.
And that introduces another concept in Toriko that I think is one of the best ones of like, if you
Yep.
eat really good food, it makes you substantially stronger than you were before.
You
And-
level up, and I
Yeah.
think they literally say level up. Like your
They probably
cells,
do.
your cells advance or your cells level up when you eat compatible ingredients.
Yeah, that's an
right.
aspect of
Yeah.
it that I like too, is it's not just, oh, the jewel meat is worth 700 experience points. It's per the person that's eating it.
Right.
Yeah, their taste aligns to their cells, and that makes them noticeably stronger. Like I feel like if certain characters ate this jewel meat, they wouldn't get nearly the buff that Toriko does.
Correct.
Well, and then later on,
yeah.
they show that it's actually more compatible with Sunny than anybody.
Right. Like
Right.
after at the end, like he has the strongest reaction to it than more so than anybody else.
For sure, yeah. So
But
I think
the end fight, like the fight, if you want to even call it that, after he steps out, is like some of the most hype shit that I can think of, like in Shonen Jump for me, like in terms of how I felt at the time when I first read it. Like, it is unbelievable how cool it is to see him come out and like he's been beaten down twice and he just like wails on Starjan. But before he does that, he walks up to him and is just like, hey, I know you're in a robot that is preventing you from feeling pain. I want you to turn that shit off because I want you to feel every single blow I give you. Right? Like, I'm about to beat you to death and I want you to feel it. Like, and Starjan's like, okay. Like,
that is some alpha shit from both of them, and I love that. The thing that description of it reminded me of is, so like when Akira Toriyama, because I feel like no matter what shonen manga we talk about, we're gonna get back to Akira Toriyama somehow. But when Akira Toriyama was writing the Frieza saga, and when he got to that moment where Goku has turned Super Saiyan and he just glares at Frieza, like before he's even thrown a punch at the guy, like Akira Toriyama said, like, I felt like I had finished then. Like, I was trying to get to that moment, I got there, and everything was done. That moment where Toriko gives thanks for the jewel meat and then steps out, I feel like that is a very similar moment of just like, yeah, it's done here. We all know what's going to happen. Now is the time for the spectacular beatdown that we have all been waiting for.
It's a little bit of like wish fulfillment, or like we know what's coming and we're really excited to see what's about to happen to Starjan after all this shit.
I think Shima even pulls like a big fucking meme where like Toriko walks out and they have that conversation and he charges up his like tenfold, which is like the first time he's ever been able to go like 10 consecutive punches in his like nail punch. And I think that's the end of the chapter. And then the next chapter starts and it's like, that doesn't happen. It like happens out of, it's kind of like one of those anime previews or some shit. You're like, all right, he was charging up the punch. Where was it? And like, it's like 10 pages into the next chapter that he actually does that. And it's just do it already. Just fucking punch him.
I do love that, like, as Toriko continues, the number of like punches in his nail punch grows, and that's a signal of how strong he is at any given point.
Yeah, it's like a really good yardstick for like how, and then even still, like he tests it with like Terry a couple times. Like he's like, all right, I'm gonna punch this rock. Let's see how many I can do.
Right. Yeah. I love that is one of the best things about Toriko, in my opinion, is how it progresses and you get this definite, significant sense of progression as the series continues from all the characters. It feels like even off-screen characters are growing beyond what they were when you saw them last, and you're excited to see them when they come back, just to see like, okay, Toriko's come this far. How far is Zebra now? How far is Koco now? That's always super fun.
The answer for Koco is nobody knows.
No one
It'll happen off screen, and then I cry.
So I guess my question is, when you guys finished like the Jewel Meat arc, like where were you? What headspace were you in, like related to the series? Like, were you excited to read more? Were you still as interested as you were before you started, or, you know, has this like entered a new like Hall of Fame in terms of manga you had read early on or something like that?
Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first, Zen?
I'll go first. So I was actually sold on the series post Puffer Whales, because the Puffer Whales kind of highlighted everything that I really liked about Toriko, is these fantastical, crazy creatures that, and it's like, I'm not gonna explain this very well. I'm gonna ramble a little bit, but I love when there's something like the Puffer Whale that is just this little insignificant fucking thing. Like, it's not a threat to anybody, but it's super hard to get, and it's super mystical and fantastical and like rare and exotic, and it's very cool to me when there's that kind of stuff that's like, it doesn't have to all be about fighting, I guess, for me, is what I'm trying to say. So while the Jewel Meat fights and stuff were super hype, and like, you know, Starjan's cool, he's one of my favorite characters, Toriko's awesome, it was a very great like Dragon Ball moment. What really pulled me into Toriko the most was the world and the shit in it. That was what got me to that point. So Jewel Meat didn't really establish anything for me any more than the Puffer Whales did before that. I was already on board.
Yeah, if anything, it just like reinforced what you already knew. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, the shit was really cool, but like I've been here, like I'm already on.
Yeah, the Jewel Meat was just more of like, oh shit, the Regal Mammoth is fucking dope, and the Puffer Whales were fucking dope, and there's gonna be even more fucking dope shit out here in this world going on that I'm gonna get to see as I keep going.
Hell yeah.
That's all I
What
got.
about you, Rick?
So I was okay. I kind of want to give a progression of the stuff that we've talked about, just because I think that will be easier for me to kind of give you where I was at the end of this arc. So I was kind of talking to you throughout because you were the big force that got me to try to read Toriko. Because up until like talking to you, Toriko was this like, oh yeah, that was that like silly looking stupid manga that they tried to push as being interesting, but no one really cared about. But so like through your Twitter, you convinced me to try it, and just so I could talk to you about like why you liked it so much. And the first two arcs, if you want to call them that, like up until the rainbow fruit thing, I was not feeling it. Like the overpowered level of Toriko just wasn't fun for me. I wasn't into that. But once we got into the devil python, I was more interested because it felt like we were getting hints of a larger world. But things like Coco's death sense that was going to definitely be subverted by the end of the arc, like that turned me off a little bit. And honestly, even Jiro, even though I like him so much now, I was like, okay, this guy just feels like, okay, yeah, he's there to be awesome now, and he'll probably show up later and do some stuff. But like, I just, it was not congealing together for me. It wasn't really until we got to the Jewel Meat arc that I was super on board, because I feel like that was the moment where Shima really started to hit his stride and put things together and make things work in the way that he would later, where the story overall kind of feels like it's all working together as one thing, instead of parts of it working at times and other parts not really working. The final fight with Toriko, though, that was what really sold me, because up until then I had a little thing in the back of my mind saying like, he's not ever really going to get challenged, is he? He's just going to breeze through everything, and the reason that he'll win is because he's awesome, and it's, you know, that kind of thing. But no, like past this point, that never really happens again. He always has to work and earn his victories from this point out, and I really appreciate that, and that's what really sold me on the series as a whole. And after this, I was excited to continue and to keep going. And honestly, after this, the story has only gotten better from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way, kind of like a mix of both of you guys. Like, when I first read it, I really have to think back on this one because it's been like 7, 8 years now. But around like the Puffer Whale arc is when I was sold, maybe a little earlier. Probably like the very end of the Rainbow Fruit arc, I was on board. Puffer Whale sold me hard. And then like at the end of the Jewel Meat arc, it kind of solidified like or reaffirmed that I was like making a really good choice and like reading this and getting excited about it every week, because I was like, the payoff was like so immense, because this was the first big one. And this was the first time Toriko had been pushed and like had to like advance or figure something out, and like couldn't solve problems the way he normally does, and was fighting like real people instead of, you know, monsters. And it was just like a really good culmination. It almost felt like everything up until this point was act 1 of like a play, and this was like the closer. But yeah, so I mean, what, just to close it out, like what would you guys like rate the first, I guess, like 50 chapters, because that's about what this arc is, the first 50.
What are we doing it out of?
Out of 10, because that's
Out of
how
10?
that's how I like to operate. Yeah.
I'd say 8 out of 10.
That is hard for me, because like if I rated the first couple arcs, it would be like at a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, just rate it. It's fine.
If I'm gonna give that'll
thing.
make it easier for me.
The whole thing.
Up to Rainbow arc, 4 out of 10. Post Rainbow arc, I'm gonna give it 7 7 jewel meats out of 10 because
7 jewel meats out of 10.
Because like it got so much better at that point. Like it's
Right.
hard for me to really convey the level of improvement. It's as though like Shima ate some really good steak that night and really leveled up his
He powered
manga
up.
writing. Yeah, like it really took a big step up, and honestly, it really took bigger steps up going on forward from here. Well, I won't go that far, but like, yeah, like this, I think was the moment that I was like, yeah, I'm on board. I want to read the rest of this, and I'm sad about the things that I've heard about it not getting a great ending, or at least not getting the full ending that he wanted to give it.
Right.
This was the moment that really sold me.
So you'd recommend it? You'd recommend people start it?
Absolutely,
100 100,000,000%. Yes, do it.
Yeah.
It's on my top 10 list, so that's yes.
It's #1 on mine. So it's genuinely like the most fun I've ever had with a manga, and like I just love it so much, and it makes me happy to see people that, you know, I interact with a lot like enjoy it even a fraction as much as I did. Like, so yeah,
I would probably put it in top 5 for me as well. I'm sitting here trying to think of other manga that I would put above it, and there's not a lot like this, and they're all ones that I am very, very invested in. So like, it's
Right.
nothing against Toriko that it's not at the #1 spot.
Well, I think we've about covered it all.
Yeah, I would say so. So
I
you
think
know,
the
if
only thing that we can say is read Toriko.
yeah, if somehow you have followed Neo on Twitter up to now and have not done so, read Toriko.
There's a few on my list I still got to get around to, but yeah, read Toriko.
And I get, you know, I'm gonna surprise impromptu section that I just now made up. I know obviously Neo, it's on yours, and I just said it's on mine. Rick, in your 4-course manga, would you put Toriko on there?
Hasn't finished it yet.
I have not finished it yet. That is true.
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
honestly, at the point that I'm at, given that there are so few manga that I would say are significantly above it, yeah, I think this would make it on my full course manga. The thing that has mainly held me back from making a real full course manga is that I'm not sure that I have enough stuff that I would really be willing to put on there that I'm saying like, yeah, you definitely have to read this.
It's your full course manga of life, dude. You got to fill it out. You got to taste all.
Yeah,
the
man. Remember, it's not
delicious
about
books.
recommendations. It's your personal meal.
Yeah.
That's true. And honestly, I think if I'm saying your personal meal, I would say that, yeah, this definitely makes it. I think that this is an excellent series, and it deserves so much more attention than it's gotten.
All right, well, there you go. 3 out of 3 full courses.
We're all in agreement.
Can't
Let's hope
recommend
this
this shit
trend
enough.
continues.
So by all means,
3 out of 3.
by all means, read it. And that's all I got.
All right.
Say goodbye to the people.
Go follow us on Twitter and
I will
come
put
join
everybody's
my
Twitters in the
podcast.
description. By all means, everybody click each one of those and click the big fancy follow button.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on. Hopefully
absolutely.
do it again soon.
Like, rate, and subscribe, or comment, or whatever you do on YouTube.
Click the bell. I hear that's a thing you have to do now.
Push the bell to stay notified when you want to see all the great content on the Zenrotto YouTube channel.
And then the
Don't
question
you
is,
love
are we proceeding with Toriko further, or are we going on to our next series next time?
I think next week we should do another series. I think that would be good.
I think that we should rotate series. We should go with the sumo thing should be our next one.
Yeah, I believe it's Hinamaru Sumo. Is that what it's called?
Hinamaru Sumo. Yep.
All right. So stay tuned for within the next week or two. We don't have a schedule yet, but it's the first episode. Cut us some slack. We're going to get there.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. We're putting it together. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And we will see you guys next time.
Thanks
Sounds
for
good.
watching.
Yay.